The Common Ground World competition happening on January 28, 2025 will feature the Peppermint Hot Cocoa meta. The craft requirements for Peppermint Hot Cocoa are simple: 1 hot cocoa and 2 peppermint. It is crafted in the cafe with the craft time of 2 minutes and 20 seconds and stored in the storehouse. For this competition, Peppermint Hot Cocoa will give 95,000 stars for each one sold. In case you don't remember, Hot Cocoa was introduced as the meta for a competition that happened a year ago on January 2024. The craft requirements for Hot Cocoa are 2 chocolate bar, 1 milk, 1 marshmallows, 1 water, and 1 ceramic mug. It is also crafted in the cafe with a craft time of 2 minutes and stored in the storehouse. The trade time for this competition is 20 seconds with a 1 gasoline cost per trade. The starting layout provided for this competition is a plains biome with a river on the north side and 2 mountains located on the east and west sides. The cash boosts for this competition are peppermints from 400 to 1,600 and hot cocoa from 45,250 to 135,750. The rewards for this competition are the standard Gala rewards for reaching the top 1,200 placements in the leaderboard by the time the competition ends. Rewards are usually distributed directly to your account within 5 days. This is the Peppermint Hot Cocoa design that I created for this upcoming competition. It is inspired by the Hot Cocoa design that I created a year ago. This one is doing about 47 Peppermint Hot Cocoa per hour. It has been running for over 16 hours now, so that is a stable production rate. I am going to scroll through the production monitor now so you can see the production rate of all the items here, and I am going to break down the crafting process of everything going on here and then talk about some other things related to this design. I'll begin by explaining the windmill crafts, which are sugar, salt, and cornstarch. I have 6 logger houses in charge of collecting wood from the 15 tree farms. All of the tree farms have the 5 passive water that they need, and they are all on a green craft timer. The wood will get taken directly to the windmills or to the lumber mill to craft lumber, which I'll talk more about later. I do have 8 farm tractors. They are in charge of picking up all the crops, such as brine from the salt fields. I do have 12 salt fields here. They are all on a red craft timer since this biome does not provide us with an ocean, which means there is no passive salty for the salt fields. That's why so many salt fields are required. They should be taken to the closest silo, which is this one. I also have 8 sugarcane fields. Some of the sugarcane fields are on a yellow craft timer, these 2 right here, because there is a storehouse next to them casting 1 shade on them, and that is done on purpose. There are also 3 cornfields. 2 are on a green craft timer right here. 1 is on a red craft timer because it has shade from both storehouses and the east side mountain, and the corn and sugar is primarily taken to these 2 silos in the center. If for some reason those are full, then they will go to this silo. There are a total of 3 silos, as I pointed out right there, and there are 32 windmills in total. I will begin by showing you which windmills are crafting salt. So the 6 windmills over here closer to the salt fields are of course the ones crafting salt. They should be picking up all the brine from this silo. In the center here, there are 5 windmills crafting cornstarch. That would be 2 here, another 2 over here, and the 5th one right here. They are closer to the silos since they do have to take 4 trips to pick up 4 pieces of corn to craft the cornstarch. Now the other 21 windmills are all crafting sugar. All of the windmills in this design are on a red craft timer since there is shade from both sides because of the mountains, and just to optimize the space, I have them all packed together so they're all casting shade on each other. And all the products get stored in the storehouses, of which there are 4 of. Now I'll talk about milk, chocolate, and marshmallow production. I have 1 ATV in charge of picking up the milk from the 8 milk barns, which are feeding upon the 22 meadows around them. And of course, all the milk barns have the 3 passive water that they need. That's why I had to have an additional pond placed right here. I have 10 cocoa trees. They have the 5 water that they need, just like the regular trees. Most of the cocoa should be going to these these two silos, which will be closer to these chocolate shops, but I also have some of the cocoa going over here, and that's why I also have a chocolate shop over here. There are a total of 5 chocolate shops, all crafting chocolate. They had to make 5 trips to the silo to pick up cocoa, and then 3 trips to the storehouse, 2 to pick up sugar, 1 to pick up milk. There are 7 candy shops. These cast 1 shade, so it's nice to have them closer to the crops because it shouldn't cast shade on them with 1 tile of space away from them. And they are all crafting marshmallows, which have a high craft timer. Candy shops do need to have that 1 pass of water in order to craft marshmallows. That's why I have them close to ponds or a passive water source. Now I'm going to talk about the ceramic mug production. I am utilizing nuclear power here to provide passive energy to the pottery shops without casting dirty on them. If you were to use a power plant, it would cast dirty on them and then slow them down. Since the pottery shops are negatively impacted by dirty, that is why it is essential to have nuclear power in order to accomplish an efficient rate for your ceramic mugs because of the pottery shops. There are 2 clay fields to gather enough clay lumps for the ceramic mugs. There is 1 forklift all the way over here in charge of not only picking up crude oil, but picking up the clay lumps from the clay fields and taking them to this warehouse. Of course, if the forklift is busy, then the pottery shop workers will go and pick up the clay lumps from the clay fields themselves. They do have the power to do so, but the forklift is more efficient. Besides, you're going to need it for gas production anyways. I have 2 warehouses to store these items in, one on the east side, the other one on the west side. I have 1 lumber mill to craft lumber with, and it will take that lumber to this lumber yard right here, which is close to the 2 iron mines that are going to be crafting chromium. The iron mines will also need to pick up water drums, which is crafted from this water facility right here that has the 3 passive water that it needs, and it quickly takes the water drums here, and they are quickly picked up by the iron mines to craft the chromium. The chromium is required for the ceramic mugs, and I do have 4 pottery shops crafting those. And finally, Peppermint Hot Cocoa. I have a total of 6 cafes. 3 are crafting hot cocoa and 3 are crafting peppermint hot cocoa. The peppermint hot cocoa also requires 2 peppermints, so I have 5 peppermint fields. Most of the peppermint should be getting stored on this silo. Some of it may go over to this silo, but the peppermint should be quickly picked up by these cafes. Also, the peppermint fields are not negatively impacted by shade. That's why you can have them closer to other buildings as well as closer to the mountain. For the gasoline setup, I have 2 water pumps, 2 power plants, a refinery in between them crafting gasoline, and a refinery to the side crafting petroleum. And the forklift I mentioned from earlier will also pick up crude oil from the 5 oil pumps and take it to the 1 fuel storage. For the trade setup, I have a trade depot on the southwest corner of the town, and I have 1 empty spot right here that could be used to place down a builder house. Here is what the auto cell looks like. The items that are stored in silos and warehouses, I have those at a cell quantity of 12. All the other items that are stored in the storehouse are at a cell quantity of 10. Here's what the build looks like on the visualizer. Total cost is about 22.6 million. This doesn't include the additional 1.5 million or so that you're going to spend on the steel mill to craft the steel required for the nuclear power. Wages are 13,640 per minute. You will have no issue paying the wages once you are finished with the design. I'm using the site called commongroundworldplanner.online. You can find the file for this visualizer on my Discord, and an invite to my Discord is in the description. I believe 47 peppermint hot cocoa per hour is a competitive rate for the competition, and it is possible to get the rate closer to 50 per hour. If you notice, the hot cocoa rate is actually closer to 48 per hour, and I recently sold a batch of 10 hot cocoa, and that's because I didn't have enough peppermint to craft it all into peppermint hot cocoa. So one easy improvement would be to add another peppermint field, and there are other improvements that could be made to boost it even further. I do believe maybe another cocoa tree would help, and you may potentially need some extra buildings such as 2 more cafes, 1 for hot cocoa, 1 for peppermint hot cocoa, just to boost the rate a little bit more. There might be some other buildings, maybe you do need some other windmills. I'm going to let you figure out how to do that, and I will let you figure out how to gather more space in this. I do recommend you using using spotted roads or subgrid placement in order to acquire more tiles to place more buildings in. If you've noticed down here, I wasn't originally going to do this for the build showcase. This is what I call a spotted road, where it's just one road by itself in order to allow more buildings to be placed next to it. The reason I decided to do this is because if I only used for oil pumps, the design would actually be gasoline negative. You would eventually run out of gasoline, and I realized I did need a 5th oil pump in order to fix this. And by doing so, by moving this paved road right here and then adding another oil pump right there, I was able to fit in the 5th oil pump, which solved that gasoline issue that I was seeing with this design. And all I'll say is that you can keep doing that in other places in the design in order to acquire more spots to build. Usually you only want to do that with roads that aren't used by workers. Now I'll talk about the cash strategy. The total build cost for this is 24 million, which isn't the most expensive design, but it's also not the cheapest. Half of that build cost is due to the nuclear power, and there are only 2 items that are cash boosted, like I mentioned before, Peppermint and Hot Cocoa. Now Hot Cocoa, it doesn't make sense to sell that for cash because you're just better off crafting Peppermint Hot Cocoa and selling it for the stars that you need to be competitive. And as for Peppermint, the problem is that it doesn't really give you that much cash. Even with the 4 times cash boost, you'll get more cash from selling a batch of gold than you would from selling a batch of peppermint, but you can craft peppermint somewhat quickly and it doesn't care about shade, so you can have a lot of it next to the river on the east and west sides where there is shade impacting it from the mountain. So if you are able to build a freight pier and sell peppermint in batches of 100, then it might work pretty well. Otherwise, you should probably stick to Gold Rush. You will only be able to use some of the space right here for tree farms and gold penning sites, some of the space as in 6 rows right here that are not having any shade from either side of the mountain, but you can still make a Gold Rush with that setup and just have all of your forges and whatnot on the east and the west sides closer to the mountain. So you can still get all the cash that you need from a Gold Rush. It will probably just be set up differently than what you're used to. This design actually came out better than I thought it would, so that's great. That's going to be everything for the build showcase. I hope you found this helpful and informative. If you did, leave a like, leave a comment if you have any questions or feedback, and consider subscribing if you haven't done so already. If you want to help support the channel, I have links in the description on how to do so. And as always, I appreciate your support and thank you for watching.